Hello and welcome to Issues and Insights. I'm Jarrett Cox and thank you so much for joining us. Today is a very special and different episode than what we normally do because this is September and September is Suicide Awareness Month. If you're struggling and are contemplating suicide, please call the suicide hotline at 988 or text TALK to 741-741. The world is a much better place with you in it. So one of the reasons that we're talking about this month, because it is such an important cause, but there's a great event that's happening in Elizabethtown about suicide awareness, and we have Jake Richardson with the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention here.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
To give a little bit of inside baseball, normally when you see me here in the host chair, I'm not here. I don't schedule myself for these things. Usually something happens, there's a scheduling conflict. This is the first time that I've ever actually scheduled myself to host one of these, and that's because this is an important topic for me, and the walk is something that I've been involved in every year that has happened in person. And this is the fourth walk and the third in person.
We first started it up in 2020, which, a lot of things had to be changed around for numerous reasons.
Oh yeah.
But ever since then, we've been walking in person. It's been an event that's gotten bigger and more wonderful every year, and it's something that I'm very happy to be the walk chair for.
You throw such a great event. Samantha McKenzie, who could not be here, even though I tried to bribe her with Diet Mountain Dew. I'm sure she'll see this afterwards, but she got me involved in that from my time at ECTC, and it is just such a great event, and I am so happy to be a part of it, and I'm so glad to have you on the program to talk a little bit about it.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you giving me the time.
Absolutely. So this is the third in-person walk, and it is Saturday, September the 16th.
Yep, at Central Hardin High School.
So can you talk a little bit about how this all started?
Well, it goes as far back as 2014. For those who don't know, the Out of the Darkness Walk is AFSP, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's biggest fundraising event throughout the year. And there are several walks in different cities all across the state. Back in 2014, I had, just come off of leaving high school, where I first started having trouble with my own mental health. And I discovered the Out of the Darkness Walk that was taking place in Louisville that year. I went to the event, and it was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. The image that perseveres in my mind, and something that I always bring up whenever something like this comes along, is the image of over 100 people in front of me, over 100 people behind me, all while we started walking, knowing that we were all there for the same reason. So after that event, I thought to myself, well, why can't I do something like that? It took several years to kind of get the ball rolling. I didn't move to Elizabethtown itself until 2016. But in 2019, I finally got in touch with the area director, the former area director now, Megan Cole, who just let me take the ball and run with it. She said, if this is something we want to do, let's do it. So in 2020, boom, we had it.